Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys and clarify a point about axial loading exercises. For people who don't know what that means, axial, if you think about what that word means, and the loading, that means exercises that load weight directly over your spine. And usually directly, while you're standing upright. In other words, you're standing on your feet in a weight that puts a load on your spine. That includes the big ones we think of are obviously the squat and the deadlift. Those should come to mind immediately. But that also includes things like standing presses and any variation of a standing press, and even a barbell row, and shrugs. Although shrugs aren't always going to meet everything I'm going to discuss here, they're still an example of this. Now, I've discussed in the past, because of my own training, that because I have so many axial loading exercises and so much tonnage and work set every week with them, that I do have to pay very close attention to my maximum recoverable volume. That it is a problem. That's why I've removed certain exercises for a while, like chin-ups, back out of my program, because I'm spending 3 days a week focusing on axial movements. Meaning I have a whole day dedicated to standing presses, a whole day dedicated to squats, a whole day dedicated to deadlifts, and I'm coming in and doing a fair amount of sets with them. So I have to mitigate those things. And I actually had a subscriber ask in the comments, hey, I'm really thinking I need to remove barbell rows from my program because of axial loading, because I just want less axial loading. And here's kind of the take home that we need to take from this. I don't want people, when I discuss the recovery issues from this, to be afraid of these exercises. Yes, they are the most difficult exercises to recover from. The more axial loading you're subjected to, the harder it is for you to recover. And I mean, probably the most prominent case of that would be things to where you start trimming range of motion down just to use a heavier weight and load your spine heavier. That's where you really start to beat up your recovery even more. And your training frequency is going to get pretty horrific when you do that. In other words, people who do heavy pin squats, heavy block pulls, heavy rack pulls, yeah, that beats your recovery up. Even more so than most of these traditional axial loading exercises. But the take home from this needs to be that yes, these exercises are tough on your recovery, but that doesn't mean you should avoid them. What it actually means is that you need to be doing as many of them as you can recover from, and then fill in the gaps for your various accessory work and isolation work and whatever else you need to work on outside of these exercises. Then you just fill them in with other things, depending upon your training specificity, your goals, what you're trying to achieve, and to keep it all balanced with your recovery. But what we have to remember here is that these exercises are the best exercises to put overall size and strength onto you. All right, they are the best exercises for this. They are hard to recover from, but isn't that the way you would expect it to be? Wouldn't the most effective, most taxing, most stressing exercises, probably not always, but wouldn't those tend to fall into the categories of being overall better exercises? Because your body responds to stress. It responds to adaptive stress, and these exercises produce that in very, very large amounts. They're amazing exercises. They are exercises that should not be avoided. All right. It's the issue is that you have to balance your total recovery. You can only handle so much of them, and so you need to pick your exercise selection wisely. And I'll get to that in a minute. But when you think about it, if someone were to ask, and you were to anyone, if you study some basic physiology, people would say, name for me a few exercises that you know will put the most muscle mass on your body. Now, conversely, also, if you were to say what exercises are going to make you the strongest, you're going to have a pretty big overlap, aren't you? If you were to be asked that question, you're probably going to say squats, deadlifts, standing presses, push presses. You're going to name things like that. Barbell rows. Those exercises work a lot of muscle groups in the body. They work a lot of muscles. And the more muscles you work through the body, the more size an exercise is going to put on you. Because these exercises not only work a lot of big muscles, they work so many secondary muscles and stabilizers with enough stress that they are capable of contributing to their growth. I'm not saying that your abs are automatically going to grow the most from these exercises, but they will grow from them. Your spinal erectors will grow from them. Your trapeziuses will grow from them. You're going to find a lot of secondary muscles all through the body are going to be stimulated by these. They will make you grow. They are the best overall growth exercises. Now, they may not be the best exercises for the bicep. If you were to name one small muscle, no, they probably aren't. But some of them can contribute to the biceps, can't they? In addition to all the other muscles they contribute to. And that's the point. If you're trying to be efficient in your training and your goal is size, you need to have a fair number of axial loading exercises in there, even if hypertrophy is your primary goal, because they work a lot of muscles. All right, if you do enough of these big standing axial loading lifts, you are going to have to do less total isolation movement to get the same size down the road. You're going to have to isolate less muscles in your body throughout the course of your training. Not saying you're going to be able to eliminate it, because you probably won't, but you'll be able to do less of them. All right, they're efficient. Now, when it comes to strength, you have to focus on them all primarily. They need to be your biggest focus if your goal is just pure full body strength. So when you look at it in light of that, you have to understand these are the best overall exercises to do towards the vast majority of training goals. We don't want to just not do exercises because there's axial loading involved, unless that exercise is axial loading and impact your recovery could impede your overall training program. And there are cases of that, but you've got to factor that in on an individual level. But you shouldn't exclude a big exercise just because you know it's going to beat your recovery up a bit, when you know it's going to put a lot of size and strength on you also. Now, a lot of people would take that and say, so you're saying we need to do only these and there's no place for other stuff? No, I'm not saying that at all. And that's the other point that needs to be made here. Yes, they are the best exercises to focus on with most of your energies, but a lot of people's goals, and even people with similar goals, will sometimes have to incorporate a fair number of other exercises, and not just for the small muscles. I know we discussed that before, and I've said, okay, yeah, you probably need to do some extra bicep work if your goal is to have big biceps beyond these axial loading exercises. That is a muscle that probably, under most conditions, is not going to be maximally stimulated by these. And you know what? That's okay. You want to get that muscle bigger, you probably need to train it directly. That should be common sense. We shouldn't really need to go there. We might need to go there, but that should be common sense for most people, and I think people can grasp that. So what about the other big muscles? That's where we run into a problem here, and legs is a perfect example. Let's say that you need to increase your training frequency further. You realize that your legs are a lagging body part, your quads, your glutes, hamstrings, all that, right? You realize they're a lagging body part, but you are already near the recovery limits of what you can handle on your axial loading, like your squats, deadlifts, things like that, right? And you say, well, I need some more frequency. I've got to have an extra leg day in there, but I can't handle more squatting and deadlifting. Well, that's when something like a leg press makes sense. The leg press works the legs pretty hard. It's a nice big compound for the legs that doesn't have a spinal compression component. Now, what we need to remember, it isn't going to give you as much overall development as, say, a squat is. It isn't going to, and it can't. But when you reach a threshold to where, say, you need to specialize in your legs, they're a problem. You need more leg strength, more leg size. Maybe they're the weak link in your squat. Maybe they're your weak link in being a field athlete, but your core and spine and everything is at its limit. It can't handle more. All right, it makes sense to come in and add an exercise like that. It absolutely makes sense to specialize a bit more and bring up that lagging area. It makes perfect sense. Same thing. So again, let's talk about even another strength goal where this could pay off. And we have to think in these terms. Let's say that your thoracic erectors are really becoming a weak link for you. You can't deadlift anymore. You can't squat anymore because they're a weakness. You're getting that rounding of the upper back excessively. Even when you take a deep breath, use proper form, you can't add more weight without that becoming an issue. All right, you might do something like a seated good morning. Not a standing good morning, a seated one. with a lightweight, just to add some additional lower stress training that hypertrophies that area of the back. So yeah, there are absolutely benefits, even not just aesthetically, those are obvious, but for strength athletes, there can be benefits to using other exercises that aren't axial loading lifts. But the bulk of your training should revolve around these exercises. They are amazing exercises. Yes, they're hard to recover from, but they are also going to give you the most bang for your buck. And they will oftentimes give you an enormous amount of gains, even for the units of recovery and stress that they put on the body that you have to recover from, up to a certain threshold. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.